My name is Father Thomas Steinke, and I'm currently serving at St. Anthony of Padua Parish in New Bedford, Massachusetts. Today is Monday of the 23rd week in Ordinary Time. Today I'll be talking about why God allows diabolic obsession, diabolic possession, and other forms of extraordinary activity of the devil. A reading from the Gospel of Luke. On a certain Sabbath, Jesus went into the synagogue and taught. And there was a man there whose right hand was withered. The scribes and the Pharisees watched him closely to see if he would cure on the Sabbath, so that they might discover a reason to accuse him. But he realized their intentions and said to the man with the withered hand, "Come up and stand before us." And he rose and stood there. Then Jesus said to them, "I ask you, is it lawful to do good on the Sabbath rather than to do evil? To save life rather than to destroy it?" Looking around at them all, he said to them, "Stretch out your hand." He did so, and his hand was restored. But they became enraged and discussed together what they might do to Jesus. The Gospel of the Lord. In today's first reading, we have a man who was living with his father's wife. St. Paul instructs his followers to deliver this man to Satan for the destruction of his flesh, so that his spirit might be saved on the day of the Lord. So sometimes in God's providence, the best thing that can happen to a sinner is that they be delivered over to Satan. Exorcist Father Chad Ripperger lists 22 reasons why God allows evil spirits to afflict someone. Most of them are positive, in accord with Paul saying, so that his spirit may be saved on the day of the Lord. I will just comment on a few of them and then talk about the apologetic aspects of diabolic affliction. Father Ripker says that the reason that demons are allowed in the lives of human beings is for the sanctification of those who engage in the spiritual battle. He then gives these 22 reasons why this is true. Father Ripker, commenting on the passage from today's first reading, says, by destruction of the flesh is meant that the inclinations of the lower faculties toward those which are disordered, that is, defects, are purified. In this way, Satan is an instrument of purification. So one of the keys to getting rid of any kind of extraordinary activity of the devil is to get what Father Ripperger's team calls psychological separation. So just like the Holy Spirit wants to live and operate through our faculties, so too do evil spirits. Their plan involves a diabolical inversion of God's plan. Any disordered passions like anger and lust empower the evil spirits and give them a deeper hold on our faculties. In some sense, this is true for all of us, but it magnifies for someone with extraordinary activity, the devil. So think about it. If you're really angry, your odds of following the demon's advice are greatly enhanced. If you're very, very angry, you have almost no chance of doing God's will. You're at least sinning in thought. So one of the biggest keys for liberation is for the demoniac to stop cooperating with the evil spirit's suggestion and instead perform virtuous actions in a consistent manner. In other words, the demoniac needs to become virtuous or holy. Another reason God allows demons to afflict humans is that it detaches a person from the things of this world. So I count this as one of the greatest blessings, the deepest kind of certainty that I see happens when a priest prays over them and the demon palpably manifests in the body of the demoniac. By manifesting, I mean that the demon comes forward and visibly shows he is present in the body of the individual. This can occur in many different ways. The body or parts of the body will start shaking or twitching. Sometimes they will burp or cough. Often mucus will form and come out of their mouth or nose. the person will feel fear, anger, or desperation in wanting to leave. Sometimes the evil spirit will shriek or tell the person or the priest to shut up. They will often manifest through the eyes in some way, sometimes with an otherworldly look of hatred. Ironically, most, not all, of the demoniacs I've encountered seem to be relieved to know that their sufferings for all these years is an evil spirit. Many had feelings of despair, thinking that their anxiety, sadness, anger, depression, etc. would go on forever. Which leads to the next effect. Father Ripper says diabolic attacks turn our eyes toward heaven so that we desire eternal beatitude and eternal salvation. So once you have seemingly irrefutable knowledge that demons are real and afflicting you and that prayer can render the spirits powerless, it's much easier to become detached from things of this world. When people are certain that they are under diabolic influence, the vast majority that I see become super focused on their faith, daily mass, at least weekly confession, rosary, holy hours. So Father Ripper says many of those who suffer from diabolic possession eventually attain a certain point in which they do not want anything to do with this world, and they simply want to be with God, where true joy and consolation reside. Next, he says that sometimes God allows the demons to attack in order to give the person an indication that he is doing the good. He says for demons, no good deed goes unpunished. Therefore, if the person is on the right track with his life and doing the good, the fact that he is under diabolic attack is a witness to the goodness of what he is doing. If what he were doing is evil, the demon would not attack but would encourage it. So when people first start going back to church, have a conversion, normally the attacks are relentless. They're bombarded with bad images, bad words, and other intrusive thoughts, especially when they go to church or try to pray. Even thinking about kind, loving thoughts and actions can cause a visible reaction like yawning. That's a aversion to the sacred. So when I see this, sometimes I will say that I think you just got your answer about the right thing to do by the negative reaction you're getting from the evil spirits. Indeed, the reaction of the evil spirits can often help you discern what to do in a certain situation. Even just by thinking about the options, you can tell what they are opposed to. They always want you to be angry and challenging, to see the bad in everybody, including yourself, to correct everyone. Always, this isn't fair, you have to stop them. They want to foster division and hatred. Father Ripper says it is a means of education. So anyone who's involved in spiritual warfare for any length of time receives an education, an enlightenment concerning the validity of the teachings of the Catholic Church. It's akin to scientific proof about all the most important teachings of the Catholic faith. Father Jose Sequia, the first exorcist in the Philippines and one of the most experienced exorcists in the world, says that the ministry of exorcism was used in the early church to prove the reality of our faith. That is why we have many pagan converts, because there were many people who were being harassed by the evil one. It was only the church that would help them through the exorcist. And he actually had extraordinary activity of the devil before he had a major deepening of his faith. So I went for team training on exorcism with Father Chad Ripperger's team in March 2024. And in preparation, I had to listen to the conferences given in 2023. One of the conferences was by a psychologist named Kristen McIntyre. She says, quotes, "The education that I received and continue to receive working with people that have these spiritual issues has changed my life. It has brought me to an understanding of my faith that I never got in RCA 25 years ago. The magnitude of what I've seen allows you to experience and understand the fullness of Catholicism, and it's been life-changing. As Father Justin Brady, he's our exorcist in the Diocese of Boise, he likes to say it's all true. And it is. It's all true. So a very prominent exorcist in the United States during the 20th century, Father Dominic Szymanski, says, exorcisms are uplifting and instructive. One exorcism brings us closer to God and fills our lives with more spirituality than many retreats. One exorcism will teach us more about the devil and his machinations than can be learned from many books. So that mirrors my experience being involved in the ministry of spiritual warfare and working with many people who have extraordinary activity of the devil gives one an experiential knowledge of the demonic world. The reality of demons and the intensity of their hatred of mankind is palpable. Demons react more strongly to a saint on their feast day and even stronger on the feast day of Our Lady or Saint Joseph, especially if they did a novena. Indeed, litanies, novenas, devotion to the Sacred Heart of Jesus, Immaculate Heart of Mary, reading Bible passages cause palpable manifestations. You can test whether a relic is authentic by having a demoniac reverence it. If authentic, they will have a visible reaction. The first time I heard an evil spirit scream was when I wrapped my stole around a demoniac, and the stole symbolizes the authority of Jesus Christ that a priest is given. Holy water in various degrees afflict the demoniac depending on the prayer of blessing. The new right blessing is weaker than the old right blessing. Epiphany water is more powerful than both of these other forms of holy water are. Father Rippiger estimates that 80% of people with diabolic obsession are liberated with one good general confession. So I've heard demons scream in confession, cough, mucus coming up. They'll manifest sometimes with a very hateful look. And I talked to someone recently who had demonic sleep paralysis, a very terrifying experience, averaging once a week for many years. And after one general confession, never again. So most people with extraordinary activity of the devil are liberated by frequent confession and daily Mass whenever possible. One of the things that I believe God is doing at this point in the economy of salvation during this time of great apostasy is to show everybody that evil spirits are real. The movie entitled The Exorcism of Emily Rose was based on a true story about a German girl named Anneliese Michel. She was a holy woman who was actually liberated, but 3 months later, the Blessed Virgin asked her, "Will you allow the possession again so that many will come to the knowledge of these spiritual realities?" She said yes, and if you watched the movie or heard voice recordings of the exorcism on internet, it is compelling proof that demons are real. Exorcist Father Carlos Martins got permission from the Vatican to start a podcast where he talks about his exorcism cases and spiritual warfare topics. It's immensely popular. Just 6 days after the release of the first episode, it reached the #1 spot in Spotify's religion and spirituality category, and is among the top podcasts overall on Apple. And these two companies are the largest podcast platforms in the world. The stories that he tells manifest that evil spirits are the real thing, and that the Catholic Church is the real thing to counter them. Recently, Father Martins was on one of the podcasts airs on U.S. Grace Force entitled Satan, the Fifth Evangelist. In it, he says that if somebody doesn't have an experience of God, how can we ever expect them to believe in God? My podcast consists of dramatic reenactments of actual exorcism cases I've conducted, along with my commentary as to what is happening. I bring the truth of Jesus Christ into the situation, and I let that speak for itself. I have a huge box of letters that people have mailed me sharing their experience of coming back to the faith by listening to the podcast. The devil is more convincing to many folks than Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. I thought if that's the case, then I'm going to use him as the fifth evangelist. Exorcist Monsignor Rossetti concurs, saying, "It's a great grace, actually, this ministry. It really impresses on you the truth of the faith. You learn by experience all those things you were taught. And I would say this, everything the Catholic Church teaches you is true, and you learn it in an exorcism. A real exorcist, they're not off, far left or far right. No, they're right down on the Church's teachings because you learn, that is true. So it strengthens your faith. It also strengthens your faith in Jesus, that you begin to realize that Jesus is Lord. So many people are afraid of Satan. Don't be afraid of Satan. Jesus is Lord. A little bit of holy water, hold up a crucifix, and the demons start screaming and running out the door. So anything even remotely holy they can't stand. So you learn the power of Jesus and the fact that demons, they're actually dust." He continues saying that possession can actually be a grace. The people that go through this process are in the front rows of the church because they know firsthand that there is God, Jesus, and there are demons, and they have found out the hard way. Father Chad Ripperger founded an order of exorcists and certainly is one of the most experienced and knowledgeable exorcists in the world, and he says this, "Even as an exorcist, you become very holy because it deepens your faith, because you see these spiritual realities. These things are very real when you're in the midst of them. It strengthens your faith." The best line I ever heard was from an exorcist in Rome. He said, "Being an exorcist is living the Christian life writ large." By that he means that there are so many different facets of the Church's teaching that come out, and it's so clear about these realities. And it's interesting because every demon falls in relation to some point of Catholic doctrine, and so it gives you a deep sense that everything it teaches is absolutely true. This does really give you clarity about the Church's teachings and the faith. Father Louis Bacqui, in a book written about a century ago entitled Minor Orders, attempts to explain why God allows cases of possession. He says that we know only imperfectly the motives for which God can allow the devil thus to manifest his power and his malice, but one of the most apparent is to make sensible the existence of the invisible world and the reality of the future life, to render more apparent by the power of exorcism the divinity of the Church, the power of the sacraments, and the prerogatives of its ministers and saints. So Jesus Christ exercises his priesthood on earth through the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church has the power of God behind it par excellence. Even Hollywood gets it right in the sense that they always have a Catholic priest involved in an exorcism. The sensationalism is where they get it wrong. They act almost as if the demons have equal power with the priest and the battle is on. Before her conversion into Catholicism, ex-Satanist Deborah Lipsky says that even back then, I feared the Catholic priests, as I knew, as did my demons, that I was no match for the power that came through him from God. I just knew better than to attempt to take on a priest and the Holy Army waiting in the wings to help him. So often we can discern truth by looking at its polar opposite. The opposite of the Holy Mass is the satanic Black Mass. The Black Mass is an inversion of the Catholic Mass. The devil also wants to be worshipped, but in a dark and evil way. They never make a parody of the various rituals of other religions or Protestants. It is also interesting and informative to note what Satanists say is most essential to make the Black Mass more powerful. They need a consecrated host. or even better, a validly ordained Catholic priest who is now working on the dark side. Zachary King, ex-satanic high wizard, says that Satanists will pay between $1,500 and $15,000 for a consecrated host. He says they can tell a consecrated host from an unconsecrated one. The ex-Satan worshiper Betty Brennan concurs, saying, For years I have persecuted the church. When I left and went back to the church, I picked a Roman Catholic church because every satanic ritual is a takeoff on the Roman Catholic sacraments. They, Satanists, know what the Eucharist is. Do you know that if there were a bona fide witch here and you put out 30 hosts or 1,000 hosts and only one was consecrated, well, they would know immediately which one was consecrated because of the presence. So have you ever wondered how this bona fide witch could tell? So I work with people with extraordinary activity of the devil, and they all react strongly to a consecrated host. In other words, the evil spirits inside the persons know whether a host is consecrated or not. It's the same reason some mediums, the ones who get help from demons, can tell you things that nobody could possibly know about your life. A bona fide medium has a spirit inside feeding them information about you. It's the same. You will not fool a real Satanist by giving them an unconsecrated host. So after seeing the power of the Catholic faith, it has certainly helped me get more serious about the sacramentals and novena and the power of my priesthood. The Church teaches infallibly on matters of faith and morals. Indeed, the Catholic Church isn't just one religion among many. It is the religion that Jesus Christ founded to get us to heaven. Hence, you have one main road that leads to a successful and happy eternity. You have one purpose in life, to become a devout Catholic. Inasmuch as you failed in this, your life is a failure.
Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed hearing the gospel and homily, I invite you to share it with someone you know who may also find it rewarding, and also to subscribe to the Catholic Voice channel. Please see in the description below if you would like to receive a text message for each daily gospel and homily. Please also keep our missionary priests throughout the world in your prayers. Thank you, and God bless.